This video compares the modern naval assets of the British Royal Navy and the French Navy to determine who would win a hypothetical fleet versus fleet open ocean battle in 2025. Going through the tactical conundrums that each side would have, the video will also cover all the important naval assets both fleets use. So, France or the UK, who would win that open ocean fight? F-35 versus Rafale will be crucial for this video, just like aircraft were crucial for big naval battles of the Coral Sea, Midway and the Philippine Sea. I love World War II dogfights, and Wings of Heroes sponsoring this video is a game right up my alley. When I want a quick fix on my phone, Wings of Heroes provides. It strikes just the right balance between realistic simulator and arcade fun for me, and I can find and finish a match in mere minutes. I love the bite-sized gameplay, so I can cram it into my busy schedule. There are dozens of real World War II fighters simulated in-game, and I must say I'm partial to the pre-war biplanes. Those things turn on a dime. Maneuverability is something I upgrade first on most planes, but there are tons of other upgrades like guns, bombs, engines and so on. Controls are super easy. I was winning fights right away. I like playing without aim assist, but it's an option. You can dominate the dogfights with friends and join squadrons, and there are new maps, missions and planes added each month. So, join me in Wings of Heroes. Download it for free using my link below the video. You can get an exclusive plane skin by using my redeem code. Just go to Settings, Account tab, and in the gift code row, enter the code Binkov. Now fly out there and blast them out of the skies. If you already know what each side has, freely skip to the 6th minute, the Showdown rules chapter. Otherwise, let's review the fleets. Both sides field 4 nuclear-fueled ballistic missile submarines. The French boats may benefit from newer technology than the older British counterparts. More relevant for sea control are nuclear attack submarines. The Royal Navy holds both a numerical and qualitative edge with 6 large, highly capable Astute-class subs. France has 5, 2 older smaller Ruby class and 3 newer Souverain class. Size of the British Astutes likely makes them quieter and they're better armed, though the Souverains may have slightly newer sensors. Carriers-wise, the Royal Navy operates 2 large Queen Elizabeth class ships, while France uses a single smaller nuclear-powered Charles de Gaulle. Nuclear propulsion reduces the French fleet's refueling burden, but the carrier is still limited by the endurance of its escorts. British carriers use a less efficient ski-jump launch system, yet overall sortie rates should be similar given available aircraft. France has 41 Rafales dedicated to naval aviation, but 30 is the maximum that can fit on the carrier. The UK has 40 F-35Bs shared between the RAF and Royal Navy. Planned F-35 Air Wings number 24 jets, even though the carriers can handle 36 to 48. In practice, one British carrier embarks jets while the other carries helicopters. If the Royal Navy took all 40 F-35Bs, the RAF would have none, so a split is required. To compare fairly, we pool each nation's Air Force and Navy fighters, then allocate the same naval share. Since France assigns 19% of its fighters to the Navy, the UK receives the same proportion, 28 jets. Now for the rest of the surface fleet. The UK operates 6 Type 45 air defense destroyers equipped with a powerful radar suite and 48 Aster missiles. Budget cuts removed most secondary capabilities. They carry a main gun, 2 automated 20mm phalanx guns, 2 manually operated deck guns and helicopters. They lack anti-submarine torpedoes, anti-ship missiles and towed sonars, though a large Merlin helicopter gives them a decent anti-submarine capability. They are planned to receive 24 Sea Scepter missiles, but only one ship has progressed far enough to count. In reality, some of the fleet would be in refit, but for this comparison we assume full availability and functioning subsystems for both sides. British Harpoon anti-ship missiles have been retired, and only a few ships carry the NSM replacement. France fields 2 Horizon-class air defense destroyers and 2 air defense Frem frigates. The Horizons are larger and broadly similar to Type 45s, carrying 48 Aster missiles, plus 2 medium guns for general and anti-missile use. They also have anti-ship missiles and torpedoes, but only one NH-90 helicopter and no towed sonar. The two Alsace subclass frigates use a different radar, carry fewer anti-air missiles, but offer better anti-submarine performance with a Todd sonar. The remaining ships in both fleets are anti-submarine and general-purpose frigates. The Royal Navy fields 8 Type 23 frigates. The class dates to 1987, but the remaining ships have been modernized with capable radars, Todd sonars, and new SAM missiles. 3 ships also carry NSM anti-ship missiles. They lack dedicated close-range defenses, but their automated 30mm guns might stop a single incoming missile. France operates 6 additional anti-submarine-focused Frem frigates that trade long-range SAMs for cruise missiles, giving them half the SAM load of British Type 23s. France also has 5 older, smaller Lafayette frigates, meant mainly for patrol. 3 were upgraded with newer anti-ship missiles, a hull sonar, and a short-range Mistral SAM in place of the older, longer-range Crotal system. France's newly delivered but not yet commissioned FDI frigate is included as well. It's a multi-purpose ship with anti-air and anti-ship systems plus a Todd sonar. Both nations have offshore patrol vessels, but only the larger helicopter-capable ones are relevant here. 5 of the larger British River-class variants qualify. 6 French Floreal ships formerly acted as light frigates, but lost their anti-ship missiles and they now serve purely as large patrol vessels. So after listing all these ships, who would perform better in an open ocean battle? Here are the rules. Each side must protect a small archipelago in the middle of the ocean, which prevents either fleet from simply running around. For example, those can be the French Clipperton Island and the British Pitcairn Islands. Both are tiny and can host a small infantry force. The idea is no support air bases or ports, so any additional land-based planes must fly to the aircraft carriers. Let's say the carriers must stay near the islands for that. Because of distance limits and the short range of helicopters, no extra helicopters can join the battle. Large ground-based maritime patrol aircraft also do not take part, and nuclear weapons are banned. The two archipelagos are 4,000 kilometers apart and both fleets start at their own islands. Let's assume their replenishment ships have refueled and resupplied them, but note the difference in the fleet's size and support capacity. If the battle involves long movements across the ocean, the French fleet may run out of fuel first. British carriers need regular fuel unlike the French carrier, but that wouldn't be much of a factor. All submarines in the Showdown are nuclear, so they can take forward positions quickly, though high speed makes them noisy and easier to detect by sonar from a few hundred kilometers away. Some submarines would stay to protect the surface fleet, like the 2 French Ruby boats, being older and noisy. Both sides would use every sensor available to listen for enemy submarines, which is another reason the surface fleets would move slowly. High speeds increases noise and weakens their ability to hear enemy subs. Both navies would deploy many anti-submarine helicopters as the first defensive layer. The British Merlin helicopter is large and capable, but their Wildcats lack a dipping sonar and cannot hunt submarines alone. They need outside targeting data before dropping torpedoes. The main British helicopter platforms would be the 2 carriers, likely splitting their F-35Bs, 14 each, and carrying 24 anti-submarine helicopters, plus some air assault helicopters if needed. The Bay-class landing ships would carry a few more. For France, the carrier would likely keep only the necessary rescue helicopters, while the Mistral landing ships, with their large flight decks, would handle anti-submarine helicopters. Both sides would also have an anti-submarine helicopter on each destroyer and frigate. Helicopter capacity would not be a problem as long as the large ships survive. The French have one clear advantage. Their E-2C Hawkeyes can detect ships from a little over 400 kilometers away, limited by horizon and cruise altitude. Helicopters have long-range radars, but fly lower, usually seeing out to 250 kilometers. That applies to both anti-submarine choppers and the 5 British Crow's Nest Merlins, which use a fairly small air search radar. Fighter jets would be used for spotting ships too. They fly very high, but their radars don't actually process returns at 500 kilometers or so. It's plausible that the Rafale's smaller radar and even the F-35's radar are configured for detection of sea targets out to 300 or 400 kilometers. The 3 Hawkeyes on the French carrier can fly nearly 6-hour missions, while fighters usually manage about 3 hours. French Rafales can refuel one another, but F-35s cannot be refueled in this scenario because they need large tanker aircraft. Hawkeyes also cannot be refueled in air. Using aircraft to search for the fleets is risky. Any radar emission would be detected by passive sensors on F-35s and Rafales, revealing the radar's position. Because of this, the French might limit Hawkeye radar use to short bursts before moving hundreds of miles. Both fleets would move toward the opposing archipelago, though not necessarily directly. The F-35B has a short combat range due to its takeoff and landing system taking up space, so British aircraft could not stray as far. French aircraft with longer range could probe farther from their carrier. That puts their carrier in less danger. The fleet might travel roughly 500 kilometers in a day. They could move faster at first, but that risks wasting fuel, which may become crucial. Some submarines might push ahead if they believe they remain quiet enough to avoid being heard from far away. Each side's early goal would be a lucky detection by a forward submarine or a spotting aircraft. A submarine might attack directly or rise close to the surface to radio in a target, so friendly aircraft could strike. The French would rely more on aircraft patrols, their main strength. If either side could reduce the other's aircraft sortie generation, anti-submarine helicopters would have more freedom, better protecting their fleet. But with thousands of kilometers between the fleets and limited aircraft reach, detection could take 2 or 3 days, with luck playing a role. Planes would, however, likely detect enemy planes' emissions by the second day. While spotter planes usually stick to an area and maximize their endurance there, with our Showdown rules it might pay off to simply send planes straight forward and fan them out. Repeating that a few times a day would tax jets and crews, not leaving many for either defenses or ship attacks. Even if a fleet is detected, it might be needed to wait for a day to recoup the forces so the maximum number of planes can be utilized at once. The British have the option of splitting their fleet into 2 smaller ones, with one baiting the French and other going the roundabout route to the target, but that might be very risky. Half the F-35s might have issues with older Rafales, and if one fleet is devoid of aircraft, then it would be a sitting duck. Still, it's an option. The main French problem is that the Rafales would be detected by F-35s first. Rafale is not a stealth aircraft, especially when carrying missiles, so F-35s might spot it from 200 or so kilometers away. Rafale's radar would not detect an F-35 until only a few tens of kilometers away because of the F-35's low radar signature, though Rafale's passive sensors might sometimes detect F-35 radar emissions, but without giving an exact track. The UHF radar on the Hawkeye might do better, but even if it detects an F-35 at 100 kilometers, that would still be too close for such a valuable aircraft. The French would have to protect their 3 Hawkeyes at all costs. Most likely F-35s would get many first shots and down numerous Rafales before the French could fire back. Rafales could only compete if several AMRAAMs are needed per kill, forcing F-35s to run out of missiles. Even if French jamming and decoys reduce AMRAAM effectiveness to around 25%, some 20 F-35s would be needed for 20 Rafale kills, roughly the largest strike formation the French could form, still resulting in French defeat. Rafales might score a few hits, but they would likely need a side aspect shot where the F-35's radar signature is larger. That might not happen often. With similar total aircraft numbers, about 30 Rafales versus 28 F-35s, the air battles would almost certainly end with a decisive British victory. The fact that Rafales carry more missiles and longer range missiles would be useless. France does have around 10 more Rafales elsewhere, but bringing those in would force a defensive French posture. It would make successfully assaulting the British islands very unlikely. In practice, the French would be better off avoiding direct fights with F-35s. Once first clashes of French spotter Rafales with F-35s would happen, the French would know the British fleet is no more than 1,000 kilometers away, so further spotters would be sent to max range, only intermittently using radar. The French would hope not all would be shot down. Then if one spotter does see the British fleet, more planes, again dispersed, might try to fly towards it with their radars off. But again, chances of many such Rafales surviving to launch anti-ship missiles would be slim. That said, submarines might also be directed to the fleet's location. French submarines carry older Exocet missiles, soon to be retired, with only a 50-kilometer range, the same as a torpedo, so they are unlikely to approach close enough to fire. Rafales can carry the air-launched Exocet, which is only somewhat better. Its seeker has been upgraded, but its small rocket motor limits range. Official range is 70 kilometers, but a high-up supersonic launch might add more. Rafales should be able to fire from beyond the effective range of British Aster missiles, which reach about 120 kilometers against slow targets, but closer to 70 against fighter jets. More realistically though, the Rafales would skim the sea and fire from around 70 kilometers, keeping them safe from radar detection by picket ships. F-35's radar range would also be cut a little bit that way. But flying that low means fuel consumption rises more than 2 times over. Rafales can carry 2 Exocets if range is not a concern. Even so, with dispersed formations and some aircraft staying aboard the carrier, France might get only 4 to 6 Rafales into firing position, if they're lucky. These shots could target Type 45 destroyers, which operate dozens of kilometers from the carrier. Intercepting 8 to 12 Exocets would be difficult, but the Type 45 might manage. Even if one destroyer were disabled, surviving Rafales would likely be shot down before attempting another run. By the time a second strike could be mounted, most Rafales would already have been lost. If Rafales attempted a direct attack on the carrier, flying closer to the escorts, they would almost certainly be shot down. Aster missiles should be very effective against non-stealthy, low-flying Rafales. Even if 1 or 2 Exocets somehow reach the carrier, its 3 phalanx guns would likely destroy them. But even a theoretical hit or 2 would not likely cripple such a large ship. Flight operations might resume on part of the deck within hours. And Britain has 2 carriers, making it extremely unlikely the French could neutralize both. As said, the British would likely secure the airspace using their stealthy F-35s. However, they have a major limitation. At present, British F-35Bs have only 3 certified weapons. 2 are AMRAAM and ASRAAM missiles. They work well in air combat, but they are poor choices against ships. ASRAAM might theoretically lock onto a ship's hot exhaust, but it is short-ranged, has a very small warhead, and is certified only for external carriage, which reduces the aircraft's stealth. AMRAAMs allow the aircraft to remain stealthy, but their seekers are not programmed for attacking ships, reportedly ignoring non-air target radar returns. A home on radar mode could produce a hit, but that isn't assured either, as a large ship radars may use different wavelengths from fighter radars that AMRAAM is designed to detect. A large volley might result in a few missiles doing damage to a French ship, but their small warheads would cause only light damage. The third weapon is the Paveway 4, a 230 kilo bomb with satellite and laser guidance. Dropped from high altitude at high speed, it might reach 30 to 40 kilometers, but only if satellite guided. Laser guidance required against moving ships likely limits range to under 20 or so kilometers. That might be enough to threaten smaller French frigates, but ships equipped with Aster surface-to-air missiles should still be able to target the F-35s if they approach that closely. F-35s would need a minute of steady flight to keep lasing the target, and the French ships would use smoke screens, interfering with laser guidance. Then again, France has only 4 ships with the long-range Aster variant, which forces a tighter French formation. Otherwise, an F-35 might slip past a defensive ship and strike the carrier or landing vessels. Thus, F-35s would also struggle against French ships. British aircraft were once scheduled to receive the Spear 3 missile by 2026, but that has slipped to sometime in the early 2030s. Besides submarine-launched torpedoes, the British have another weapon, the helicopter-launched Sea Venom anti-ship missile. It's small, but a low-altitude launch could still reach some of the French picket line ships and do small damage. The French have only 2 Horizon frigates, which could engage the helicopters carrying the missiles, forcing the fleet to stay tightly together. France is testing the same weapon, but it doesn't use it yet. Finally, without the Rafale threat, 3 British frigates with anti-ship missiles could also get close enough to attack the French. 24 NSM missiles are advanced, have passive seekers, stealthy features, and would likely manage to sink some ships. In the end, neither side could make much use of air-launched anti-ship weapons, and plentiful ship-launched Exocets would never be used because ships wouldn't survive approaching within 200 kilometers. The British would control the air, so British helicopters would freely hunt French submarines. With fewer subs and such an overmatch, French subs would be unlikely to lob many torpedoes at the British fleet, certainly not at carriers inside the protective ring. The British might lose a few ships if a French sub gets lucky, but any attack would reveal the submarine's location and helicopters would be sent to destroy it. The French cannot do the same, since their helicopters would be shot down by F-35s. Those helicopters would be threatened by AMRAAMs even if they stayed very close to their fleet. Without helicopters, French must fire anti-submarine torpedoes directly from ships, putting them too close to enemy submarines. British helicopters could thus operate freely 40 to 50 kilometers from the French fleet, if needed. More numerous British submarines of generally higher quality would likely leave the British with several submarines, while the French subs would be destroyed. After that, British submarines would get close, surround the French fleet, and fire dozens of torpedoes devastating the French surface group. Even if torpedoes run low, the French might eventually run out of long-range SAM missiles for bomb interceptions. So eventually guided bombs would mop up any remaining ships, ultimately leading to total French defeat. A quick reminder, download Wings of Heroes for free using my link below, and you can get an exclusive plane skin using my code Binkov. And remember, Binkov may talk about war, but only real peace can bring us all together.